So I wanted to give you another book recommendation since we're all going to be introverts for the days ahead of us. And this one is a little different than the books I've recommended before. The books I've been recommending or pointing you to have been kind of family, devotional kind of resources or books especially to read with younger kids, things like that. This time I'm going to recommend something that's good for for older ages, for older students, or for adults. And it's a book on logic, which might not sound all that exciting, but this one is a little different. It's a different kind of a book on logic and clear thinking and how to reason and how to have an actual civil kind of discussion based around reason and truth. And it's called, and it's quite a title, but here it is, The Amazing Dr. Ransom's Bestiary of Adorable Fallacies. Okay? Now, if that title alone doesn't interest you, I don't know what will. So here's the idea behind the book. The book is a catalog of different ways that people can get kind of tricked into arguing with each other and relying on faulty thinking or faulty assumptions in trying to arrive at the truth. And so what the author does is he picks a host of logical fallacies, and then he makes up an imaginary mythical kind of creature to go along with the fallacy, and uses that mythical creature or that pretend monster that he's made up to describe the fallacy and to describe the effect of the fallacy and essentially to teach logic. It's a really clever book. So I'm going to read to you a selection of the book just for your enjoyment and see if it might be up your alley. If you've got kids at home right now, especially older kids, and you're looking for ways to maybe supplement what you're doing at home, this book on logic would be really fun and educational. So here it is. This is fallacy number 9, and it's the fallacy of what they call ad populum. So here it is. A mob is capable of getting at you in different ways. If the mob has violence on its mind, as one in Tripoli once did with regard to the present writer, then it is a matter of sheer physical force. In the previous chapter, we discussed the fallacy involved when that physical force is threatened in order to get you to conform to an intellectual argument. But mobs do other things beside threaten your physical person. Sometimes they just stare at you, more in sorrow than in anger. Sometimes they just ignore you and carry on with their party as though you didn't exist. In the spirit of that old Sophie Tucker song, 50 million Frenchmen can't be wrong. Good old Sophie. I danced with her once at the Savoy. The effect of this truth through counting noses approach is to make one think that whatever it is all those people are doing must be true, good and beautiful, or, and this is the deadliest of all, it makes what the mob believes simply and profoundly desirable, beyond any and all reasonable analysis. When the hot panting of the mob, known to the Germans as the Zeitgeist, makes one do something one would rather not do, we call it peer pressure. When it makes one think things one would rather not think, especially things rejected previously, we call it the mainstream media. Known as the bladderback lemming, this fallacy travels in clusters, groups, and flocks. It goes about on 4 infantile hands, has a tufted head, a red breast, and keeps its bladdered back hidden beneath feathers. When it gets a real excitement going, as when Elvis was big, it can even grow into a murmuration. When challenged, the BBL pops a thumb into its mouth and inflates gaseous bladders on its back into a crowd of small, swaying, doll-sized influencers. When facing forward, the doll bladders appear to be smiling. From behind, they are collectively curling lips in disgust. The bouncy little crowd leaks a mind-numbing lotus gas that quickly collects a human rabble. The BBL may be the most destructive, potent fallacy on the planet because it taps into humanity's great fear of itself. Under the gassy influence of a herd of BBLs, a crowd can be made to affirm or deny absolutely anything. For example, in my own lifetime, I have seen otherwise intelligent people swayed by mobs to affirm that men can marry men, that dismembering infants in the womb is a positive good, and that racial exploitation and even extermination is a social necessity, and many other heinous positions embraced solely because of the mob's urgent panting, and not on any true or reasonable authority. Sadly, my dear friend Charles even went so far as to affirm that monkeys slowly spasmed into people. over generations. So you see the illustration there of the logical fallacy beast, and ad populum is, by definition, a fallacy of distraction that attempts to show the truth of a proposition by means of the sheer number of people who have already accepted it. So in ordinary terms, the ad populum fallacy is the idea that if a lot of people believe something, it must be right. Okay, that's the short version. But here is a very intelligent and yet simultaneously a clever way of describing this logical fallacy and educating ourselves in ways to recognize bad arguments when we see them. So it's a fun little book. If you're wanting to beef up your logic muscles, it would be a fun way to do it. Check it out. The Amazing Dr. Ransom's Bestiary of Adorable Fallacies.